Hey guys, I'm Philip Wilder, and today I want to share with you how you can trust God with our new president. Right now, it's in the middle of the election season. They're still tallying up the ballots. We don't know who won, and a lot of people are feeling really anxious and really nervous and really afraid even. And I want to share that even when we go through seasons like this, we can trust that God is working. And believe it or not, I even like it when big things seem to change on me or fly out from underneath me. And I'll share why in just a second. Let's get to it. So today we're going to be looking at Proverbs chapter 16, verses 7 through 9. I'll read it here. It says, "When a man's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. Better is a little with righteousness than great revenues with injustice. The heart of man plans his ways, but the Lord establishes his steps." So I'm going to be digging a little bit more into that, but we're going to start at verse 9 and then work our way backwards to verse 7. So in verse 9 it says, "The heart of man plans his ways, but the Lord establishes his steps." So we can plan what we want to do. We can be faithful and diligent to make those plans and take those steps, but ultimately the Lord is the one who's going to determine where they end up falling and where we end up going. So when big things change on us, or when things change outside of our control, I like it when that happens because I know that the end result is God's will rather than my own will. And this is an important thing. This is the first thing I want to take away from this, and that is when we've done all that we can do, we can trust God with the rest. So there's only a limit to how much you can do and how much you can affect the things around you. But beyond that, we have to trust God. He's the one who moves in that realm. And I want to further drive this home with a quick story. My fiance and I, well, now she's my wife, but 2 months ago, my fiance and I, we were looking for a townhouse here in Windsor, Colorado. And, well, we were looking for an apartment, and we found this townhouse that was for sale. And we weren't really considering buying anything, but we looked it up online and saw that the price was pretty reasonable. So we spent the next 12 hours or like 4 hours that night and then 10 hours the next morning or next day just trying to get everything in place because we weren't all prepared. We're trying to get everything in place so that we could then put an offer on that house. Well, after all that work, we get notified from the agent that the house is already sold and that it's no longer available to us. We're pretty bummed and upset, and it just kind of felt like after all this work, everything I'd built towards had just been pulled out from underneath us. It was frustrating, but we also had a deep sense in that moment that God was doing something. There had to be a reason why he put us on this course and had us doing all this work only to then pull it out from underneath us. And many of you might be feeling that exact same way with this election. You might have had big hopes and big dreams only for it all to change completely on you. Well, when that happens, we can trust God. You voted, you campaigned, you talked with your friends, whatever you had to do, you did that. But now, it's outside of your control. So we can trust God with the rest. We can determine our steps, but ultimately God is the one who's going to determine the path for our nation. So we can trust God with that, regardless of who's president. God knows, believe this or not, you might think you know who's best to be president, but God ultimately knows who's best to be president for our nation right now. The second thing I want to look at, going back up to verse 8, it says, "Better is a little with righteousness than great revenues with injustice." This applies especially to businesses. We need to be doing good business, even if that means cutting our revenue by a good deal just because we want honest gain rather than big fortunes. But it also applies to relationships and just to a mentality in life. Rather than fighting and wrestling to try and get what we want, we should walk peaceably following God in righteousness. And whatever God gives us as a result of that, will be much better than anything we could have fought to try and establish for ourselves. And this is not to say that we don't do anything. I'm just saying never step outside of righteousness. Working hard is great. We should work hard. We should strive. We should do the best that we can. We should try and get the best deal if we can, but never stepping outside of what is righteous or what God calls good. And that is especially true in our relationships when it comes to talking about politics or talking about what we wished happened or what is happening. We need to make sure that instead of trying to convince people, we can try to convince people, but only in love. Anything outside of that, we need to trust God with. We can share our thoughts, share our opinions, share our ideas, share what we think is going on, but ultimately we need to be doing that with all righteousness and love for these other people, rather than trying to pull someone to your side forcefully and very unlovingly. We should try and win them through love. And this next verse ultimately points towards that. Verse 7, when a man's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. God can open incredible doors. Oftentimes we think that our enemies are always going to be our enemies. People at work who are opposing you and keeping you from getting that next pay grade advancement. We think that they're always going to be against us, but God ultimately can totally transform hearts and have those people who are our enemies become our friends. God can open these doors in amazing ways. And so we need to be trusting God with this. Walk at peace with God, and we will see him do amazing things, especially in regards to our new president. Whoever he is, we need to be treating him respectfully and lovingly. And those who agree with him, the other side, we need to make sure that we are loving them and respecting them. And as a result, good will come about. We will make friends out of enemies, and we'll be able to go much further that way than we could if we fought and hassled and reasoned and tried to get people to agree with us forcefully or unlovingly. Now, I want to show the conclusion of this whole townhouse story, how even things that get pulled out from underneath us, if you feel like that's what just happened this election and you don't know what the future holds, we can trust God with the future. 20 years from now, we'll look back and we'll be able to see this is why God picked that president. Or 100 years from now, maybe even just 1 year from now, or just 3 months from now, we'll be able to see why God picked this particular president. And it might be hard to see, but we can trust God with that. What happened with the townhouse, though it would have been great to buy that townhouse. It seemed like it was a great deal. It was a great place and a great location. It would have been such a hassle to try and buy that townhouse while we were wedding planning and while I lived 500 miles away. That would have been so hard. Well, we found another townhouse that we could rent, and so we started renting out this townhouse, and we moved all of our stuff up, and we started thinking, it'd be great to buy a place, but we really do not want to move again because that was such a hassle. We don't want to do that again, and we really like this location. It opens up a lot of opportunities for sharing the gospel. So we decided, we will just stay in this townhouse and keep paying rent and keep trusting God with it because it seems like this is what God has given us. Well, just a little bit ago, the owner of this townhouse came to us and asked us if we would like to buy this townhouse from him and do it in such a way that we wouldn't have to go through realtors and hopefully get a much better deal than we could have on that other townhouse. It's such a huge answer to prayer, and looking back, I can see that is exactly why God pulled that other option out from underneath us, because it was not the best option, though it seemed like it at the time. This ultimately is a much better option. And we're so excited with what God has given us. And I hope in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, we can look back at this president and see that this is the best option that we had right now. So we can trust God with our president. Thank you so much for watching.